The old SUV screeched to a stop in front of the marble-clad hotel entrance. Driver: none. Luggage: empty. A middle-aged man in a wrinkled gray coat and worn-out shoes stepped out under the half-curious, half-contemptuous stares of the crowd. No one knew who he was, only that he looked tired, walked with calm simplicity. Just another man without anything remarkable. But the truth was, this entire room was about to freeze because of that single step. Oliver Grant, 52 years old, founder of Grant Systems, a medical technology empire worth tens of billions of dollars, had chosen this day to vanish from his powerful CEO persona. No bodyguards, no flashing brands, no spotlight. Just a stripped-down man entering what was once a potential partner's hotel to see how much he was worth without a business card. The lobby was cold. The golden light spread across marble polished like glass. Oliver approached the reception desk, holding a black card in his hand. The clerk, Samantha, 28, with bright red lipstick and a smile that never touched her eyes, looked at the card. She hesitated for a moment, then her lips curled into a mocking grin. "Are you sure this card is really yours?" Her voice carried a tone that was half teasing, half falsely sweet. A quiet laugh escaped from the waiting chairs. A few guests turned, their eyes lingering on his wrinkled coat, his worn shoes, before shaking their heads. In their minds, he was nothing more than a dreamer pretending at wealth. Oliver did not react. His eyes were calm, but heavy with weariness and disappointment, not because he was being doubted for the first time, but because old memories rushed back. At 17, Oliver once stood in a mid-range hotel wearing an oversized shirt borrowed from a thrift store. The manager had looked him over and said coldly, "Not you. You don't have the face for the VIP table." He had bitten his lip hard, retreating quietly. That sentence carved itself into his soul, leaving a scar that never faded. Back in the present, Samantha flipped the card in her hand as though it were suspicious. Oliver remained still, patient, without anger. He simply observed. In the corner of the lobby, a young girl rushed to help an elderly woman with her suitcase. It was a small moment, but one that felt genuine, far warmer than the fake smiles at the reception desk. Oliver's gaze softened for just an instant. Samantha continued to pretend she was typing, never even glancing at him. When Oliver asked about his booking, she answered curtly, "Not in the system." Yet, on the screen in front of her, his name shone clearly. Oliver Grant. Presidential suite confirmed. She simply refused to look. A few more guests chuckled. Two doormen whispered, "That shabby coat asking for the presidential suite? Ridiculous." Oliver heard it all, but stayed silent. Inside him, every memory, every time he had been judged by appearance, stacked one upon another. In just 5 minutes, the entire room would go silent. They would realize their mistake, and a $2.8 billion deal would collapse because of one scornful glance. Oliver exhaled slowly, his fingers brushing the frayed edge of his sleeve. He had seen enough. He pulled out his phone and sent a short message to his assistant. "Confirm deal status. Consider canceling." No explanations, no warnings. Just a clean, simple decision. At the desk, Samantha smirked faintly, convinced she had dismissed a troublesome guest. She had no idea that in just a few minutes, a Rolls-Royce Phantom would glide to the entrance, and with it, the true identity of the man she had belittled would rip the mask off this gleaming lobby. Oliver's silence was not submission. It was the storm waiting to break, and when it came, it would not be he who needed them. It would be they who trembled, realizing too late who had been standing before them. Samantha turned the card in her hand as though it might burn her skin. She tapped at the keyboard, the clacking sound steady but meaningless. The screen in front of her still blinked at the login page. Not once had she typed in the guest's name. To Samantha, Oliver was not worth her time. Just beside her, a middle-aged couple sat in the lounge chairs, sipping wine and whispering. Another man pretending to be wealthy. Dressed like that and thinks he belongs in the presidential suite? How pitiful! Oliver heard every word. He did not turn his head, did not react. His shoulders remained straight, his hands resting calmly at his sides as if he were standing in his own home. But inside, every whisper felt like a dull blade scraping slowly across scars long hardened. His eyes swept across the lobby, the marble shining like glass, chandeliers glittering like ice. A world of luxury, but cold to the bone. The only trace of warmth was the image of a child helping an elderly woman with a pure, bright smile. Oliver tilted his head slightly, his gaze softening for a moment, before returning to the false reality before him. "We're busy," Samantha said suddenly, lifting her head, her tone sharp. "Please wait for the real guests to arrive." In that moment, the room seemed to tighten. A few other guests laughed aloud. Oliver's eyes flicked to the screen, his name clearly displayed at the top. Oliver Grant, Presidential Suite, confirmed. He exhaled slowly, not with anger, only with a quiet disappointment so familiar it felt almost routine. The revolving glass doors opened, carrying in the scent of expensive cologne. A European man in his 40s entered, his blazer tailored perfectly, his leather suitcase gleaming. Samantha instantly straightened, her back firm, her smile bursting with false radiance as if she had just seen the sun. "Good afternoon, sir. Would you like a glass of iced lemon water with a slice of golden lemon while we process your check-in?" Her voice was suddenly soft, dripping with fake courtesy. Oliver stood right there, like a shadow. Samantha did not even look at him, as though he had vanished from the room. The same desk, the same computer, but two different worlds. Oliver closed his eyes briefly. The words of long-ago teachings echoed in his mind. Respect is not a reward. It is the default. Yet here, the default was discrimination. He opened his eyes and asked calmly, "Could you check for the name Oliver Grant?" The presidential suite was reserved. Samantha paused half a second, then typed a string of meaningless keys. Her lips curled into a smirk as she drawled, "That name isn't here. Perhaps you're at the wrong hotel." The words fell softly but heavy as lead. No one in the lobby realized that this moment was sealing the fate of a $2.8 billion deal. Oliver did not argue. He simply lifted his head, his gaze cold and deep, as though he was looking not just at a person, but at an entire system. A silent decision was made. In the phone in his coat pocket, a short message had just been sent. "Confirm deal status. Consider canceling." Silence followed. But this silence was the knock of a storm at the door, and no one in that luxurious lobby realized they had just locked themselves inside it. The lobby seemed veiled in a thin layer of mist. The clinking of glasses, the tapping of shoes echoed softly. Yet behind Oliver, every whisper felt like a needle piercing his back. Two young doormen leaned against the counter, their voices deliberately pitched just loud enough for him to hear. "That gray coat looks like it came from a flea market. Shoes that worn, and he dares to flash a black card. Must be fake." Their laughter was low but sharp enough to slice through the air. Oliver remained still. He had heard such things his entire life. Small laughs that seemed harmless, but together they built into an entire wall of contempt. Samantha continued tapping meaningless keys. Each strike was not to search his name, but to prolong the wait, turning it into a silent humiliation. She glanced at Oliver with eyes that dismissed him, as though looking at an outsider who didn't belong. A man in a navy suit entered, shoes gleaming, buttons polished like silver. He snapped his fingers lightly, and instantly a valet hurried over, bowing deeply. Service without request, granted purely by appearance. Oliver tilted his head, observing it all. He felt no envy. He was recording it. On a nearby sofa, an elderly couple whispered, "Look at him, standing there and no one paying him any attention." Perhaps they know he cannot afford it. Oliver heard every word, but answered only with silence. Not the silence of weakness, but of a man weighing the true worth of every gaze around him. He adjusted his sleeve, revealing a faint coffee stain. A trivial mark, yet to others, proof he did not belong here. Oliver closed his eyes briefly and sighed. He was not saddened, he was preparing. In that silence, someone else noticed. Emily, a young traveler with a backpack, stood near the concierge desk. Her eyes shifted between Samantha and Oliver. She saw the stark difference, the warm smile reserved for the European guest and the cold disdain aimed at the man in gray. Emily frowned, her fingers tightening around her coffee cup. Restlessness rose within her. She did not know who this man was, but she knew what she was witnessing was wrong. And Oliver? He still stood tall, like a mirror reflecting everyone's true nature. Every whisper, every smirk, every scornful glance, all etched themselves into the record in his mind. And then, with a light touch on his phone screen, a decision was sent. $1 billion deal was about to be erased. Not by the slam of a gavel, not by an outburst of anger, but by the icy silence of a man who had been dismissed, yet held the true power in his hands. In the moment Samantha uttered the words, "Your name isn't in the system," Oliver suddenly found himself pulled back 35 years. At 17, Oliver Grant stood in the cramped kitchen of a cheap hotel on the outskirts of New Jersey. His oversized shirt hung loosely, the cuffs frayed with loose threads, and his leather shoes were so tight they blistered his heels. That teenage boy trembled as he carried a tray of drinks, preparing to step into the grand banquet hall. But then a hand stopped him. The manager's eyes, cold as steel, delivered the words without hesitation. "Not you. You don't have the face for the VIP tables." Simple words, tossed out lightly, but to Oliver they weighed like a stone crushing his chest. Quietly he turned back, carrying the tray into the kitchen, his throat tight. No tears fell, only silence stretching endlessly, suffocating. And that silence became a scar. Now, standing in the gilded lobby of a luxury hotel, Oliver at 52 still heard the echo of that day. Samantha held the black card as though it were suspicious. The mocking laughter behind him was identical to the whispers in that old kitchen. Except this time, the boy of 17 had nothing to prove, while the man before them now was the founder of a $40 billion empire. Oliver opened his eyes. The memories did not weaken him. They forged his resolve. Long ago he had vowed that no one in his company would ever be judged by appearance or background. Respect by default was not a slogan on a wall. It was the soul of Grant Systems. And yet here, strangers were replaying the same script from long ago. The difference was that this time, he held the pen to write the ending. Samantha sighed, pretending to keep typing. In one unguarded moment, Oliver tilted his head and caught the eyes of Emily, the young traveler. In her gaze, He saw suspicion mixed with indignation. No words were needed. Oliver understood. At least one person recognized the injustice. He gave a small nod, as if to send silent thanks. Then his hand tightened around his phone. A message to Victor, his loyal right hand, had already been sent. Prepare. 5 minutes. 5 minutes. That was all it would take for this small world to flip upside down. Oliver drew in a deep breath. In his mind, the 17-year-old boy smiled faintly, then faded away. To everyone else, he was still just a man in a wrinkled coat and worn shoes standing quietly. But within that silence, power was rising, steady and fierce. The storm was already at the door, and no one in that lavish lobby realized that they themselves were standing at its center. The revolving glass doors creaked open, and the atmosphere in the hotel lobby shifted instantly. A tall European man, around 40, stepped inside. His blazer was perfectly tailored, and a polished Italian leather suitcase rolled smoothly behind his shoes. Samantha, who had been cold and dismissive toward Oliver only moments earlier, immediately leapt to her feet. Her shoulders straightened, her smile lit up as if someone had flipped a switch, and her voice rose with sudden sweetness. "Good afternoon, sir. Would you care for iced lemon water with a slice of golden lemon while we process your check-in?" Oliver stood right beside her, like an invisible shadow. The same counter, the same computer. Yet the treatment turned upside down in an instant, dictated only by clothing. The European man nodded lightly, barely acknowledging the sudden warmth. To him, such service was the default, an expectation. Oliver watched, his eyes calm, though beneath the surface waves churned. The scene was all too familiar. The blatant favor given to the one who looked wealthy, while he, the man who commanded a multi-billion-dollar empire, was treated as if he did not belong. He spoke slowly, his voice even and sharp as a finely honed blade. "Please, check the name Oliver Grant. Presidential suite, reserved." Samantha paused for half a second, then deliberately tapped a few meaningless keys. Tilting her head, she let a faint smirk play at her lips. "That name isn't here. Perhaps you're at the wrong hotel." Her words fell lightly, yet cut like glass. Oliver glanced at the screen and clearly saw his name glowing at the very top. Presidential suite, confirmed. But Samantha had already decided. A man in wrinkled clothes could not possibly be a worthy guest. From the sofa, laughter rose. Another man pretending to be rich. Probably borrowed the card from someone else. Oliver remained silent. His shoulders did not tremble, yet every vein in his hand tightened as he gripped his phone. He had seen enough, more than enough, to judge the culture of this place. In that moment, he turned slightly and caught the eyes of Emily, the young traveler. Her gaze burned with indignation. She did not know who he was, but she understood clearly an injustice had just been laid bare. Oliver inhaled slowly, then exhaled. His decision was final. A message was sent. "Confirm deal status. Consider canceling." No one in that opulent lobby realized that even as Samantha's mocking smile still lingered on her lips, a $2.8 billion deal had just been erased. Oliver stood still, silent. But it was not the silence of defeat. It was the silence of a man ready to turn the entire room upside down in the blink of an eye. The fake keystrokes from Samantha clattered on, empty and meaningless. In the lobby, the air grew thick, but instead of quieting, murmurs of laughter spread, leaping from one corner to another like sparks catching dry cloth. A pair of business travelers whispered loudly enough to be heard. "He's still standing there? Probably waiting for a bus. Must have wandered in by mistake." The two doormen broke into coarse laughter, not even trying to hide it. One of them glanced directly at Oliver's worn shoes and sneered. "I'd bet those shoes cost less than a cocktail at this hotel bar." The laughter rippled outward like waves, a silent conspiracy of mockery, no one naming it, but everyone complicit. Oliver remained where he stood, his figure still as stone. His hands hung loose at his sides, but his eyes studied every face, every expression. He wasn't seeking an apology. He was quietly gathering evidence, piece by piece, to assemble into a complete picture of a culture rotten to the core, yet wrapped in gilded luxury. Samantha didn't even bother to hide her disdain. She cast a look over Oliver's shoulder toward the European guest who had just been handed a glass of water garnished with a perfectly cut slice of lemon. The contrast was sharp, and it made the entire room even more cruel. From the far corner, Emily, the young traveler with the worn backpack, sat still, her heart pounding. She saw it all, the way Samantha beamed at the European man, the way she treated Oliver with coldness, even contempt. Slowly, Emily pulled out her phone. She kept it low in her palm, tilting the screen toward the front desk. One gentle tap. Record. The camera captured it all. Oliver standing silently, his face unreadable. Samantha typing without ever looking up, and behind him, the ceaseless ripple of laughter. Emily bit her lip, her eyes burning. A thought surged inside her. If I don't record this, who will believe it? Meanwhile, Oliver unlocked his phone once more. A short message was sent. Victor, 3 minutes. No one in the lobby knew what it meant, but for Oliver, the countdown had begun. The laughter continued. The looks of contempt persisted, but they had no idea they were laughing in the face of a man who could change the fate of the entire hotel with a single decision. And that decision was drawing closer with every passing second. The rhythm of the lobby suddenly shifted. The glass doors spun once more, and the sea breeze swept in carrying the sharp scent of perfume. Another businessman entered, his navy blazer perfectly tailored, a gold watch gleaming at his wrist. Before he could speak, Samantha rushed forward as though following a rehearsed script. "Good afternoon, sir. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Your room is ready. Allow me to bring you a fresh towel and a glass of lemon water." Her smile was dazzling, her eyes sparkling, her voice sweet as honey. The man gave only a faint nod, hardly acknowledging her, because he was too accustomed to this kind of service, the default privilege granted to anyone who looked wealthy. Oliver stood right beside them. No one looked his way. No one asked, as if he had been erased from the air itself. His black card still lay on the counter, pushed aside by Samantha like a worthless piece of plastic. Other guests began to giggle. A woman whispered loudly enough to be heard. Perhaps he picked up that card somewhere and decided to pretend. Her companion laughed. Or maybe he's just an imposter. Let's see the guards drag him out. Oliver did not move. His face was as calm as a still lake, but deep within his eyes a fire had already been lit. He glanced quickly at the computer screen behind the desk. His name, Oliver Grant, glowed brightly at the top. Presidential suite. Confirmed. The evidence was undeniable, yet Samantha never intended to look. From the moment she saw his wrinkled coat, she had decided he did not belong here. In the corner, Emily's heart raced. What she was witnessing struck her conscience like a slap. The same desk, the same process, but two entirely different worlds. She tightened her grip on her phone, the camera recording every smile of favoritism, every mocking word. Oliver lowered his head, his hand covering half his face, and exhaled slowly. In his mind surfaced the words he had once spoken in the boardroom. Respect is not selective, not conditional. It is the default. And now, before his eyes, he was witnessing the exact opposite. Once again, the phone in his pocket buzzed softly. The message he had sent still had no reply, but he knew Victor had received it. In just a few minutes, the curtain would fall. While the lobby filled with laughter and fawning words, no one realized they were performing for a silent spectator, the one man who had the power to end the show with a single gesture. Oliver raised his head. His gaze remained calm, but within him the storm had already formed, waiting for the one moment to break free. The revolving glass doors turned slowly. A gust of sea air swept inside, carrying the low, heavy rumble of an engine that made the hotel lobby tremble. A gleaming silver Rolls-Royce Phantom stopped at the steps, the afternoon sun striking its polished surface like a blade cutting through the still air. The valets who had just mocked Oliver froze, their eyes wide. The doorman hastily straightened his tie, his hands shaking slightly. But inside, Samantha had yet to notice. She was still leaning forward, pouring out all her charm on the guest in the navy blazer. Then, the rear door opened. Victor stepped out first, tall, sharp in a black suit, his eyes cold as steel. Behind him came Elena, Grant Systems financial strategist, holding a tablet with unwavering focus on her face. Last was Marcus, head of security, broad-shouldered, an earpiece in his ear. Together they moved like a practiced formation, decisive and in perfect sync. No introduction was needed. Their presence alone was enough to silence every laugh. In seconds, the mood shifted from mockery to tension. Victor's eyes swept the lobby, then landed on Oliver, the man in wrinkled clothes everyone had just scorned. In an instant, his expression softened into respect. "Are you all right, Mr. Grant?" he said clearly, his voice deliberately loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. The room froze. The whispers shattered like glass. Samantha stiffened, her smile vanishing from her lips. The glass of lemon water trembled in her hand, a few drops spilling onto the white cloth. From the corner, Emily's phone kept recording as her heart pounded. In her frame, the man humiliated just minutes earlier now stood as the undeniable center. Those who had mocked him looked stunned, as if slapped across the face. Oliver did not answer. He merely turned, his calm gaze locking on Samantha. His silence weighed heavier than any scolding. Everyone in the lobby understood. The reckoning had begun. The hotel manager, a salt-and-pepper-haired man, rushed out from his office, pale and frantic. Mr. Grant, we truly had no idea. We're so sorry." But the apology was too late. From the moment Victor spoke the words, Mr. Grant, every mistake had already been laid bare. Samantha stared at Oliver, her lips trembling. You're Oliver Grant?" Oliver remained silent. In the depths of his eyes, disappointment had solidified into judgment. No gavel needed, no raised voice. Everyone in the room knew a storm had just officially struck. The hotel lobby fell silent as if the very air had been pulled away. Samantha stood frozen, clutching the black card that only minutes earlier she had treated as suspicious. Now it burned in her hand, a piece of evidence condemning her. Hotel manager Graham, sweat beading on his forehead, spoke with a trembling voice. "Grant, this was all a misunderstanding. Your presidential suite is prepared. Please, give us a chance to make this right." Victor stood with his arms folded, his gaze sharp as ice. Elena checked her watch, noting details on her tablet as if she had seen this play out countless times before. Marcus stood like a wall, his massive frame and steady eyes unflinching. Oliver took a single step forward. The sound of his worn shoes striking the marble floor echoed in the silence. He looked at Samantha, then swept his gaze slowly across the entire lobby. Each glance reflected back the behavior of those around him, the contempt, the laughter, the favoritism. Then he spoke, his voice low and steady, yet heavy as steel. "I do not need an apology." Samantha's lips parted, but no sound came. Graham lowered his head, his heart pounding. The entire lobby felt pinned in place, waiting for what would come next. Oliver continued, each word deliberate and sharp. "I need culture." The words fell like a blade. No one dared breathe. From the corner, Emily kept recording, her grip tight on her phone, a chill running down her spine. She understood this moment was bigger than a personal confrontation. It was a verdict on an entire system. Graham opened his mouth to explain, but Oliver had already turned away. He did not need to shout, to scold, or to demand. His silence was stronger than any accusation. Every step he took toward the exit was a judgment, heavy and final. Samantha trembled, her eyes wet with red, and whispered in a broken voice, I'm sorry." Oliver did not stop. He did not turn. No nod, no glance of pity. For in that moment, any apology was far too late. Victor, Elena, and Marcus followed him in solid formation. Their footsteps echoed in unison, deep and resonant, like a funeral march for the hotel's honor. In the eyes of the guests who had laughed moments before, smugness turned to shock. They realized the man they had dismissed was not just a guest. He was the one who could erase a $2.8 billion deal with a single nod. The truth needed no announcement. It stood present, undeniable, and absolute. And as Oliver stepped through the glass doors, the entire hotel lobby sank into a crushing silence, the silence of a verdict already carried out. As the glass doors closed behind Oliver, the hotel lobby sank into suffocating silence. But outside, the storm had already begun. Emily's fingers trembled as she kept her phone aimed at the revolving doors. She said nothing. She simply pressed the live button. The image appeared on screen. A man in a wrinkled coat walking silently, followed by 3 sharply dressed associates. The sound of their footsteps striking the marble floor echoed like the ticking of a clock counting down to a historic moment. On the small screen, words appeared typed by Emily herself. "CEO cancels $2.8 billion deal after being disrespected." Within seconds, comments exploded. "Wait, is that Oliver Grant? Which hotel is this? They're finished." "This is a lesson for everyone." Red hearts floated up in streams, each one like a hammer blow crashing down on the hotel's reputation. Inside the lobby, Samantha collapsed into a chair, her hands shaking so violently she dropped the black card onto the floor. The clatter rang sharp, a reminder of an unforgivable mistake. Graham, the manager, bowed his head, sweat soaking through his collar. He understood this was not just the loss of a single guest. They had lost an entire era of partnership, the credibility that had taken decades to build. 3 hours later, Emily's video passed 2 million views. No marketing campaign, no hashtags, just raw truth. Major news outlets ran headlines. Tech billionaire rejected at partner hotel. $2.8 billion deal collapses. On Twitter, the hashtag respect by default shot straight to #1. Users everywhere shared Oliver's words. "I do not need an apology. I need culture." The phrase rang out like a global rallying cry. At Grant Systems headquarters, employees read the internal email Oliver had sent shortly after. "We cannot control the way others look at us, but we can always choose how we treat them. Kindness isn't weakness. Respect isn't earned. It's owed by default." A wave of pride swept through the company. They knew this was not just their CEO. This was a man who had turned values into action. In a dark room on the 49th floor, Oliver stood silently before the glass window. The city below glittered, loud and blinding. He placed his hand on the cold pane, not to push, only to feel. His breath was long, deep, then still. No champagne toast, no roar of victory. Only the certainty that he had done the right thing. Somewhere else, Emily sat in her small room, her eyes fixed on her phone screen. The video she had captured had become global news. She gave a faint smile and whispered, "Sometimes, doing right begins simply with not looking away." And so the story closed. But its aftershocks spread far beyond the hotel walls, far beyond a single deal. It became a mirror held up to every business, every person. Respect is not a reward. Respect is the default. In the world of business, true value does not lie in billion-dollar contracts or luxury cars parked at the entrance. It lies in something far simpler, in how we treat another human being even when we do not know who they are. Oliver Grant proved a truth. Power does not need to shout. True power is the choice to walk away when respect no longer exists. If you believe that respect must be the default, press like to help spread this message and subscribe so you never miss the next inspiring story. And before you leave this video, leave a comment with the phrase, "Respect first." So together we can remind the world that respect is always the starting point of every relationship.